Hello and welcome to the inaugural I3 Summit by TimesBridge. It's the first year that we are doing this, and we are super excited to launch this platform. It's the platform wherein we are trying to bring in the best of voices across the world and from India. And the idea is to get some of the most successful entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs to come and share their learnings about their journeys in general and, of course, about India. On this inaugural session, we have a very special guest today. I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Sanjeev Bikhchandani, founder of InfoEdge India, also a veteran in the tech industry for India. So a very warm welcome to you, Sanjeev. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Great. So without further ado, I can quickly start with a round of questions from my side. So it'll be great to hear from you, Sanjeev. You started your journey way back in 90s. When most of the people are not even thinking about internet businesses, and we've seen you having being successful over the decades, so to say. It'll be great to hear from you. What are the key differences that you are observing from then till now? Like, how have internet businesses evolved, and are there any key differences or similarities that you see in the businesses?
Well, if I look back, I quit my job in 1990. Prior to that, I'd done my MBA. I'd worked for 5 years in 2 multinationals in advertising and marketing. I quit my job in 1990 and I became an entrepreneur. No big idea, no vision, no nothing. Just pursued a bunch of small things for the first 7 years. I was drifting, right? Doing a whole bunch of small things: salary surveys, databases, report writing, teaching, training, part-time journalism, whatever came my way to survive. In 97, we launched Naukri as the 21st small thing I was going to do. At that time, there were only 14,000 internet accounts in the country. There was no venture capital. There was no, startup culture. If you were an educated, qualified person, you wanted to do a job, you didn't want to be an entrepreneur. That was the environment then. Right? I think between then and now, several things have changed. Let's look at the entrepreneurial ecosystem first. It is now desirable and even socially acceptable for highly educated, qualified people from the IITs and the IIMs to want to be entrepreneurs. Right? And their parents are supportive, the family are supportive. It is socially acceptable. Right? I remember in the 90s, if you quit your job in a large company and became an entrepreneur and you failed and you wanted to come back to your job, your career was over. You were doomed to a glass ceiling of middle management because entrepreneurial experience was not valued. You were called a failure. Right? And so you retreated and came back. Today, if somebody comes into a large company with 3 or 4 years of entrepreneurial experience, that experience is valued. You say, hey, he knows stuff. He's got a 360-degree view of the organization. He can take a risk. He can work across functions. Therefore, it will be prized. It will be valued. Right? In most companies.
Yeah.
So that mindset has changed. Second is early stage risk capital is available in decent supply, enough amounts, right? So you can get your angel round, you can get your seed round, and some may not get the Series A, but enough will get Series A, enough will get Series B. Companies will grow and form, and we're seeing that in the kind of success stories we are seeing, right? So a much larger number of very smart people, highly qualified people trying to be entrepreneurs. In the 90s, the aspiration of those kind of people was to do a good job in a good company, right? I think socially acceptable. I think capital is available. I think there are role models. I think there are mentors. I think there are organizations like TIE. I think there are angel networks.
Yeah.
There are incubators in colleges and engineering colleges, management schools, even arts colleges have incubators now, right? Yeah. So it's a done thing. And it's regarded as important and useful. As far as the market is concerned, right? It's become much larger, especially for internet companies. Mm-hmm. Right? When we, like I said, when we started Naukri in 97, there were 14,000 internet accounts in the country with shared account users, maybe 100,000, 200,000 users.
Yeah.
When we raised venture capital in the year 2000, there were 4 million users. Today, that number is up by 100 or 200x. Today, real businesses are earning real money online. Today, even FMCG companies, even old world companies are looking at online business for the mainstream business. So I think digitalization is real. I think online businesses are real. I think offline companies are going online and making that a part of their strategy. So I think many things have changed. So there's been a complete transformation. But it's not been one day. It's been gradual over the years, year after year. Things have changed.
That's super interesting. I mean, it must have been a completely different world when you must have started with like 14,000 internet accounts, which is such a different world, and today is a completely unimaginable world that we are in. Kind of taking a cue from that further, you scaled many businesses, and in your personal opinion, what are the 2-3 key important things that one has to keep in mind while scaling businesses in India, right? I mean, it's a very different world. While there are a lot of technology kind of started in Silicon Valley, but India is a completely different ecosystem. So I'm sure there are some local nuances that you can talk about maybe.
So look, most companies start small, right? Now, if you are a category creator, which means market does not exist, you're a pioneer innovator. Mm-hmm. So online job search did not exist in India when you started, right? We had to create the category. Yeah. Restaurant listing sites did not exist in India. Zomato created a category. Shopping comparison, insurance shopping comparison did not exist in India. Policybazaar had to create a category. So there are companies that are category creators. And if you look at those companies, right, you start small, you figure things out. Most importantly, you understand the consumer well. Yeah. If you understand the consumer well, you will find out the unsatisfied needs, the unsolved problems, and you will address those. If you address those, you're creating a market where the customer will buy, right? And if you're able to do that, then you've got a good start. Then it's about how large is the potential market and how well do you execute.
Yeah.
Right. So the market for food delivery was, say, X, because people would call up restaurants and the local restaurant would deliver home. Mm-hmm. And there was one delivery company called Domino's, which delivered pizzas at home and was doing very, very well. But only pizzas, only its own pizzas. Mm-hmm. So it was a pizza company, not a delivery company. Right. It delivered the pizza, their own pizzas. Right. Taking a cue from there, when Swiggy and Zomato, and Swiggy did it first, we must acknowledge that, decided to get into food delivery, and there is a network of riders in a city and restaurants to supply. Swiggy and Zomato, the aggregators, would get a commission, right? Initially, right, the response was interesting. It wasn't giant. Mm-hmm. But over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, it has become a giant market. A new category has been created. Now, to do all this, what do you need? You need a great management team. You need a great team. You need technology, right? Without a great team, you can't do it. So there must be a large market, a potentially large market. Agar market ही नहीं तो scale कहाँ से आएगा?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Second is you've got to have the chops to service that market, the capabilities. And if you have that, then you can do things. So, but at its heart, once you know you're addressing a potentially large market, scaling up is about letting go to the right people as an entrepreneur. You get a good team and you empower and delegate, you're all right.
And I think you touched upon some of these. My next question was going to be about, what is it that you did differently to kind of stay relevant for such a long time, and you continue to your business continues to thrive in even after so many decades. So a couple of things you mentioned. Any other nuances that you think you can, specifically like on the execution side, right?
I'll tell you. See, when we launched Naukri, we did it with just 2 people, 3 people, right? Maybe 4 people, right? And we would simply take jobs from all the newspapers in the country, 29 of them, and put them up on our site.
Interesting.
So we did that first. When we did that, traffic began to come because people wanted to see jobs. And here were all the jobs for the last 30 days in one place. Mm-hmm. So, if you are in Delhi, but the job came out in Hindu in Chennai, you could find it here.
Interesting.
If the job came out 15 days ago and you missed it, you can find it here. So it was a very useful resource for people looking for jobs or interested in looking for jobs, right? Management people, right? Mid-career. And traffic began to come. The moment traffic began to come, people began to apply for those jobs. And in the communication, they would say, I saw your job on Naukri. So the HR manager who never advertised on Naukri, he advertised in the paper, began to hear about Naukri.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
When that happened, people began to approach us saying, listen, I have got some jobs I've not advertised in the paper because I only advertise maybe 10% of my jobs in the paper because paper is expensive. Otherwise, I do it through headhunters, old better than file, employee referral, all of that. If I send you those jobs, will you put them up? Mm-hmm. And we began to charge for that. So some small money came in. Then we began to send letters to all HR managers every month saying, this is Naukri, this is the internet, this is what we do, here's the job format, this is how much it costs. And more money began to come. So we began to break even. Right? Then we raised venture capital. We're still a small company. We're doing 3 lakhs a month when we raise venture capital. And then we said, hey, we've been selling by direct mail, basically sending out letters. Why don't we hire a salesperson? So we hired 4 salespeople in Delhi. Said, go out and sell, meet companies. Mm-hmm. And we discovered that the average salesperson within 3 months was selling 50,000 rupees worth of listings. And his total cost was 22,000 rupees. And this 50,000 going up every month. So he was profitable in his own total cost.
Right.
So we said, hey, this is cool. Let's add more and more salespeople. Mm-hmm. And over the next 2 years, we had added 240 salespeople across 11 cities, and we had scaled. So what I say is that in order to scale profitably, a company needs to find its repeatable, profitable unit.
Right.
And we had found a repeatable, profitable unit, which is our salesperson.
Interesting.
So once you find your repeatable, profitable unit, keep on repeating and keep on and ensure with every repetition the unit is profitable and you will scale with profit.
And how do you tackle challenges that come your way, right? So as over a period of time, there may have been fundamental shifts in which, let's say, platforms like I don't know how you look at LinkedIn, for example, or those platforms. Like, how do you sort of change your business model to kind of tackle those scenarios?
So we have not changed our business model. So look, we studied LinkedIn very carefully. And we came to the conclusion that LinkedIn will and Naukri will coexist. Mm-hmm. The reason being that we are very good at solving one problem, which they're not so good at. Mm-hmm. They are very good at solving another problem, which we are not so good at. Right? So if you want 300 Java programmers this quarter, you won't go to LinkedIn. You'll come to Naukri. But if you want that one technical architect, of which there are 346 in India only, that one specific niche skill, mm-hmm. Of which 14 are on Naukri, but 76 are on LinkedIn, right? You may go to LinkedIn first, right? So I think we found our sweet spot, and I think they have found theirs.
Got it. Great. Taking a slightly different tangent in your journey, you have also been involved, like you mentioned, Zomato and Policy Bazaar and a few other startups that you spotted them before anyone else, and you actually invested in them. So were there any particular qualities in these founders that you saw that got you excited? Like, how did you decide to sort of put faith and trust in them?
So look, there are 2 very important things. One is the quality of the idea or business. The second is quality of team, right? So when I say quality of idea or business, we look for evidence of natural traction or such a compelling value prop that we know it'll work, right? So if the startup is solving an unsolved problem, it should be getting traction without advertising, which means लोग आ रहे हैं, इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, खुश हैं, थोड़ा पैसा शायद कोई दे रहा है, right? And then, on that foundation, you can invest money and say, now scale it, right? So in the case of Zomato, the site was getting traffic It had no money. It wasn't advertising. It was getting 1 lakh rupee a month of revenue, and they were somehow managing, working out of home, right? But the great thing about Zomato was that it was the only website that had all the menu cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally found that very useful and interesting. Right? So when I met Dipinder Goyal for the first time, I asked him, "Boss, ye idea kahan se aaya? Where did you get this idea from?"
Mm.
And he said, "Look, I was working in Bain Consulting, and it was in Gurgaon after finishing from IIT, and it was a office where there were maybe 55 people, 50 people, 60 people, something like that. Mostly young, mostly male, mostly living away from home, mostly single, which meant that they would not get food from home. Office hours were long, working hours were long. You ended up having invariably lunch and dinner in the office.
Yeah.
Office had a cafeteria that would not serve food, but you could bring your own food and eat it there. To make life easy for the team, the admin folks had collated all the delivery menu cards of all the 70 or 80 restaurants that delivered to that location and put them in a file in the cafeteria. Mm-hmm. And Dipinder said, at 1 o'clock, there's a long line to access that file. Then you get it for 2.5 minutes. Then you quickly decide and you phone up and you place the order. And then you come back after 1 hour and the food is delivered. So it's a huge pain.
Right.
So he came in one Saturday and scanned all those menus and put them up on his personal page on the office intranet. Mm-hmm. And he said within 3 days, the IT infra guy in office came to me and said that, "What have you done? Why is 95% of the internal traffic going to your page?" And he said the penny dropped. Mm-hmm. And I figured that aggregation of menu cards has got value. Right. And so I went on weekends and picked up menu cards from all restaurants around Delhi NCR. And when I had 800 of them, I launched the site. And immediately traffic began to come. He had built a traffic magnet. Right. And that is something which told me he got a customer signal. He got a customer insight. The customer had told him that we want menu card aggregation. He just did it and it worked. So the market gives you a signal. The customer gives you a signal. Can you read it?
There is a slight similarity between the way the supply side was solved by you versus and what Dipinder did, I think. This platform is also for folks who will be joining us from across different parts of the world. So are there any nuances that you have observed in, say, successful Indian entrepreneurs and especially tech entrepreneurs versus, let's say, folks sitting out of Silicon Valley? And are there any sort of insights you want to share over there?
Well, look, if money is getting tight, which from the Fed's announcements and actions, it well might be, which means you've got to do more with less. You've got to be slightly more frugal, perhaps, than you were 2 years ago. Then you've got to focus a lot on unit economics, customer money, and revenue and cash flow, operating cash flow, as opposed to earlier when you could get a lot of money to fund what you want to do and look at revenue only 3 years later or 4 years later, right? Yeah. Which means that you've got to have a sharper focus on the consumer in India. And let's face it, the consumer in India is price conscious. If you want to build a mass product, right, you've got to be priced reasonably in India, because the market for expensive stuff in India or premium goods is only so much, which very often means that you've got to find unique solutions to India at price points that would be lower than in the developed world, right? Take a look at what e-commerce has done, or even the food delivery company have done on cash on delivery. Cash on delivery is not a Western concept. Right. It doesn't exist in the US, in the Valley. Everything is electronic, everything is by card. Yeah. But e-commerce companies, food delivery companies still do 60, 70%, sometimes 80% of their business on cash on delivery. Right? That is a fairly unique thing for India, that you send the stuff, the guy who delivers gets notes, cash. You have to hold reverse supply chain back of handling the cash and then receiving the money at your end. At the same time, what cash on delivery does is that it gives the customer the opportunity to say, I've changed my mind. Take it back. I won't pay you the money. And you have no choice but to take it back. That imposes extra costs on you.
Mhm.
Because what you thought was a sale is not a sale. You got to pay for getting the product back. In many cases, you can't use that product again or resell it. You have to sell it as seconds. So you
Right.
lose even more money. So your economics have to be such that you take care of that. Right? 67% of India's population is not urban.
Yeah.
But they're getting online. They may or may not know English. India has 26 languages.
Mhm.
Right? How do you cater to these populations?
Mm.
And the product or the offering that's relevant for them may not be relevant to what's relevant for the person in big cities. The logistics, if you're sending product, are different for rural India, perhaps more expensive.
Mhm.
You still got to make money. So these are uniquely Indian challenges, and depending on what vertical you're addressing.
Got it. Interesting. Thanks for that. One more, a bit of like, future looking, crystal ball gazing kind of a question is like, what makes you bullish about the Indian market overall? And then are there any particular spaces which you think are going to be really stand out of outperformers?
So look, I think a couple of things. A large young population,
Mhm.
which is aspirational and wants to upwardly mobile.
Yeah.
That's one big thing. The second big thing is that the fundamental economic growth in India.
Mhm.
We may have had blips. We may not be China, but the Indian economy is growing. So growth, large young population, aspirational. I think these two fundamental things will drive India. In addition, there is a legal system, no matter how not so well it may be running right now. There is democracy. Imperfect, perhaps, but it is there.
Mhm.
And these two things will endure and make sure India lasts a long time.
Right.
Right? So large population, economic growth, democracy, rule of law. Right? And that's what makes me optimistic about India. In terms of sectors, look, we don't do it top down. We look at companies bottom up.
Mhm.
There was no sector called food delivery. There was no sector called restaurant listings until Zomato made it happen.
Right.
There was no sector called insurance aggregation until Policybazaar made it happen. What sectors are bullish about? We're not bullish on sectors. We're bullish on companies.
Interesting.
If somebody's doing good stuff, back him. Sector ban jayega बाद में.
That's such an interesting thing. Yeah. Any role that you think, this obviously with UPI and, digital payments becoming all pervasive and increasing month on month, we see new records being set on that. How have you seen that as it's a pretty phenomenal thing unique to India as well. How do you see that as another growth driver?
So I think that's a huge enabler. I think what the government did in UPI is truly remarkable. I think what the government has done in Jan Dhan accounts is truly remarkable. And I think what the government is trying to do in the healthcare stack, hopefully will work as well as UPI. And if it does, these are transformational. Whole new categories, industries, companies have come up and are doing business because of UPI. Right? Suddenly, the ease of making payments, receiving payments has gone up manifold. And what that does is increase velocity. And anything that increases velocity is good for business and growth. It reduces friction in the system.
Right. And it unlocks a new value, which, a lot of businesses were not looking at internet as a source of subscription revenue or any of those things, right? I think just the ease of transactions just kind of enabled all of that as well. Just a parting sort of question, we as TimesBridge are, working with a bunch of global companies, helping them sort of enter India, and that's our sort of core business. And we have a lot of our future partners who are talking to us and interested in entering and taking advantage of the Indian market opportunity. If you were to give like 2-3, big picture advice to them, like if before or while they are entering into India, what would that be?
So I think India will exceed its market potential in the long run. But it may not meet your expectations in the short run. Because India takes a little time to get used to as to how to do business, what business to do, right? And we've seen that in company after company has entered India. Mm-hmm. Because a 1.3 billion population is very large and therefore looks very attractive. But to actually make sales and the market happen, it takes a little time because you've got to understand the consumer, you've got to understand the landscape, and come out with the right solutions.
Awesome. No, that's a super interesting insight. And before you, Dara was speaking at this event as well, and he's seen the journey of how Uber has taken its bit of time, but then now it is pretty well established in India, and they are kind of reaping benefits. So, and a lot of our partners have kind of gone through that sort of curve. So yeah, that's a super insightful industry. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sanjeev, for being part of the i3 Summit. It was a pleasure having you over here, and it was great to hear all the insights that you shared with us today, from your journey. And I'm sure a lot of our current and future global partners are going to benefit from the insights that you shared today. So thank you so much, Sanjeev.
Thank you.
Pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.